All right, welcome to the section on binomial probability distributions. This is a formula that you can see in a couple different forms. If you took Algebra 2 last year, you might have saw it in a slightly different form. We're going to use this form, and I'll make sure that we walk you through all parts of the process. But the idea behind binomial probability is a binomial probability is something that has two options. We're going to call them P and Q, or success and failure. So that's how you define binomial, where you have two options, success and failure. So the example we're looking at is jury selection. This was a pretty well-known case, years ago. But let's assume that 80% of a town was Mexican American. And now you have 39% asked to go to jury duty. So that's definitely a smaller population than the 80%. So 80% was Mexican American, 39% were invited to jury duty. So it's very low, percent. So we need to select 12 jurors and find out the probability of selecting 7 of them to become Mexican American, or having 7 of them be Mexican American on the jury pool. So why is this binomial distribution? Is because we're looking at success and failure, so Q and P. And P we're going to define as success. Success is probability that they're Mexican American, which in this case is 80%. And the probability you're not Mexican American is 20%. So this is why it's binomials, because we have these two options. Either you are Mexican American or you're not Mexican American. And that's why it's binomial. Now, here's a notation, and I'll put this here. So I got the 0.8 here and the 0.2 here. Now, N is the number of trials. So in this case, we have 12 members of the jury in the trial. And then the number of successes we're going to do, we want 7 Mexican Americans to be on the jury pool. Now, if you just look at this in a simple sense, I'll bring up the calculator over here. If we have 12 members on the jury, and we want 80% of them to be Mexican American, we should have 9.6 on the jury pool, or roughly 9 or 10, okay, somewhere around there. 9 to 10 of the jurors on the jury pool should be Mexican American. So we have 12 trials, and 7 out of the 12 is what we're looking for. So what is the probability that 7 members of the jury pool are selected Mexican American? This is where this formula comes in. And the formula is just going to be, so the probability of 7 Mexican Americans on the jury. So the problem is going to be 12C7. And I will explain this here shortly in a second. Now, probability of success is 0.8. So that's our P, 0.8. And we're going to have 7 of them, right? And then 0.2, which is they're not Mexican American, so there's 5. So when you read this formula, this right here, the 12C7, really is, this C stands for combinations. How many ways can we have these Mexican Americans sit on the jury pool? So if you think over here, just here's 6, there's 12. We could have a Mexican American here, 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 there's 7. We could also, if we didn't want to look at that situation, we could also say here, 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 and here. Notice there's a whole bunch of combinations, and I'm not going to list them all, nor would I expect you to list them all. But rather than listing all the combinations, you can just go ahead and calculate it using this formula. And I'll show you how to do that in the calculator. The 0.8 is the success, so this is the Mexican Americans, and then that's always going to go with the number 7 in this case, which is we want 7 Mexican Americans in the jury pool, and the 5 that are not. And that's really the way you want to read this, is they're not Mexican American, and 5 non-Mexican Americans and 7 Mexican Americans on the jury pool. You can calculate this out, and I will set this up here on the calculator. Now, when you do this on the calculator, this 12C7, we're going to go to our menu, and we're going to go down to probability. And remember I said it's a combination, so hit this button down here. So go to menu, probability, combinations. And where it says NCR, you're just going to do 12, 7. And if you hit enter, you don't have to, but if you hit enter, 792 ways you can have the mix and match order of Mexican Americans, so sitting in 7 out of the 12 seats. Again, you're not going to list 792 ways, which is why we give you the formula. So we're going to do 792 times 0.8 to the power of 7 times 0.2, fix that, times 0.2 to the power of 5. And that gives us about 5% of the time, so 0.053. So about 5% of the time, you should have 7 Mexican Americans on the jury pool. What's the probability that 8 would be on the jury pool? 8 Mexican Americans? Well, that's just going to be 12C8. And now we have 8 Mexican Americans, so we're going to put 8 there with the Mexican Americans, and we are only going to have 4 that are non-Mexican Americans. It's important to note that these two numbers here, the 7 and 5, always have to equal this. This plus this has to equal this. And this number here is always going to go there. So you notice the 8 here and the 8 here, and then this is going to be what's left over. I'll leave this up to you to put this on the calculator to get a percent, but you can just leave it this way if you'd like. Now, one of the major struggles with probability distributions is just setting them up. So what I'd like you to do is once you're done with this section, that's just notes, that's perfectly fine. Come up to the front of the class and I'm going to hand out lesson 5 to you, just probability distribution problems so you can get a mix of them. So what I'd like you to do first is just look through these problems, and I'll write them down here in a second, but I want you to pause the video, look at these 3 problems, and see what you would put down for P, Q, N, and X. So take a minute, pause the video, write them down first, see if your answers match up with mine. So hopefully you took the time to pause the video and take a look. So I wrote down the solutions here. So in this first example, 80% are using it, 20% are not. We have 50 people that we're sampling, and then we're going to use 40, 41, 42. You'd have to put this in a number of times and then just add up the results. For this one, you interview 250 families. How many boys are in the family? The problem here is how many boys in your family? Is there 1 boy? Is there 2? Is there 3? Is there 4? And so on. Well, the problem is this is not binomial. You have very many, possibilities. It's not success or failure. It's too many possibilities. So this is not a binomial. This one here, again, is a little bit similar to the first one, similar to the jury selection problem that we did, which is 99% of the defibrillators still work. So that's the probability of success. The failure is that 1% do not work. We have a sample size of 500, and what's the probability that none will work, 1 will work, whatever number that is, we can put that in there for X. So this is a good sample problem for you guys to work through. So we'll take you through one more problem, and again, I think it's worth pausing the video. I'm going to put down the solutions, but pause the video first and see if you come up with what we came up with. Now again, I'm hoping that you took the time to pause the video. I'm going to cover up the answers here and then I'll walk through them, but make sure you pause the video and try it on yourself. Try it for yourself first. So the first one, 15 people asked how many would you expected to see in the TV show? Well, this is just, out of 15, you multiply by 0.15, you get 2.25. So you're expecting around 2.25 out of 15 to watch. So 2 to 3 people if we had to make an approximation. Now, when you see probability out of, of the people that you watch, 7 people out of the 15, that's a typical binomial formula problem. And what we're looking at here is the 15C7, right? So 15, so 7 out of the 15 that you choose watch the show. This is the success is 15 that they watched it, and we have 7 watching it. And 85% did not watch, that's our failure, and then 8 didn't watch the show at 85% rate. So again, this 7 is going to match here. The 7 plus 8 is going to be equal to 15. That's how you know that you set it up correct. If you get a decimal, that's fine. Or for an answer, if you want to put it in your calculator, that's fine. But make sure you can at least set that up first. I mean, it's more important that you set that up first, and I'll give you the answers here from the calculator in a second. Now, what's the probability that less than 3 people? So we're going to have to do 2 people, 1, and 0. So we have these options right here. So we have 2 people watched, 1 or 0, and then you can just add up the results. So whatever the probabilities are, you can add up the results. So I'm going to pause here, put them on your calculator, see if you get the same probabilities I did. Okay, so if you want to put these in your calculator and get the decimal answers, here's what you have. And just to make it clear, so if you asked 15 people, the probability that 7 out of those 15 have watched The Walking Dead would be 0.0029 or like 0.3%. It's really small. 28% of the time, you would have 2 out of 15 watch the show, and 23% of the time you'd get 1 out of 15 people to say that they actually watched the show. So hopefully this helps. You should be able to do the next page on your own. Feel free to ask questions, and good luck.